Hey everybody, it's Raul Gonzalez.
And I'm Oscar Ibieta.
And we are Medicare Agent IQ. Why do we do this show?
We do this for agents who are either new to the business, if you're trying to gain some knowledge and learn more, sharpen your tools, or for the agents who have been in the business already for some time and you're looking for a platform to sharpen your tools. So no matter where you're at on your path in this Medicare world, we feel like we have good content for you, whether you're new or whether you're a veteran.
Yeah, and especially on the subject that we're going to go through today. So a lot of the different agents that we talk to in different markets like San Antonio, where we have a very, very high penetration rate. And if you don't know what penetration rate means, is the number of people enrolled who are enrolled in a Medicare Advantage plan. So in San Antonio, we have a very, very high penetration rate. In places like, Corpus Christi, Texas, there's kind of a large metro. South Florida is very, very high. And so there's a lot of agents that work in these markets that don't know much about Medicare Supplement almost at all, right? I could tell you that there's a lot of agents that I know personally who have maybe sold one or two. One of the best Medicare Advantage agents I know has sold 3. And he talked to me about it the other day. That's why we decided to do this. He was like, "Yeah, I'm thinking about selling more Med Sup." I'm like, "Oh, really? Okay." So now we got to give you a little bit of training.
Yeah, there's a fear. Whenever we have conversations with agents, we tell them, "Hey, I feel like if anything, it's probably a little more complicated to sell Medicare Advantage plans because there's so many rules and there's so many different types of plans that have different rules, different coverages, and all that." And when it comes to Med Sups, for the most part, these things are standardized.
Yeah, no, when you say that, it just kind of like a light just like went off. Maybe we should start people with just selling Medicare Supplement, right? Because Medicare Supplement is, so we live in Texas, and that's where most of our business is done here in Texas. And so we go by the federal standardized rules when it comes to Medicare Supplement, so Plan A through N, and the plans that are available, with the rules from the Medigap Buyer's Guide. And so what I will tell you right now is there are some states obviously that have different rules, and in particular, at least we know Massachusetts, Minnesota, and Wisconsin have different rules. And so if obviously if you're doing Medicare and you're in those states, that there's some differences. So we just want to highlight that. And of course, Washington State and a couple of other states have guaranteed issue and open enrollment rights and things like that not every state does. So what we're talking about today is really more of the standardized states. So I just wanted to kind of throw that disclaimer out there. We want agents to fully understand that. But I want to talk real quick about kind of a misconception, first of all, and let's talk about what does the ideal Medigap or Medicare Supplement customer look like?
When you're out talking to somebody, what you may think is somebody who definitely has the means, right? Or can, one way or another, is able to come up with the means, because as we know, these Medicare Supplement plans, they all have a premium to them, and most Medicare Advantage plans in most markets do not. So you want to make sure that when you're meeting with somebody, that they do have the financial means to be able to enroll in one of these. But then there are other questions. There are other things that you want to discover in that needs analysis. Do they have a lot of doctors? Are they looking for freedom? Do they have a need for the freedom? Do they have a lot of medical things already going on? If they're new to Medicare and they're newly eligible for a Medicare Supplement plan, maybe they've got some health issues that they've been dealing with over the years, and so maybe that particular individual may make sense to place them on a Medicare Supplement plan. But all that's done and it's discovered in the needs analysis, and you're giving them all their options. Yeah,
so really I would argue that there's not like the way that a person, like you can't just walk into someone's house and be like, "Yep, look around, look at the banisters and the art on the walls." Be like, "Yeah, this is a Med Sup client for sure." Because to be honest, like you never know. I was, when I first started in Medicare, I remember there's a lady who's kind of borderline qualifying for Medicaid. And I was very surprised when, after kind of going through a needs analysis, that she wanted a Medicare supplement. And so this individual, she is in our market, very, obviously in the San Antonio market is a very high penetration rate. The plans are very good, large networks and everything like that. But what mattered to her was knowing how much she was going to spend every month and having the flexibility to go to the doctors that she wanted to go to. So for her, she was just like, well, I'm going to go with the Medicare supplement. And so she chose a Medicare supplement. So it's every individual is different. And so what I would encourage people, I saw a TikTok the other day where some guy was saying, here's the breakdown. If you're broke, you're on a Medicare Advantage plan. If you're not, you're on a supplement. And honestly, it's just not the case.
It makes
right?
sense, because we've seen the opposite, where you've got clients who are millionaires and they're okay being on an HMO plan. So that's not, I hate that was said.
Yeah, no, the reality is that everybody is different and everybody has different needs and what's most important to them. So the best thing to do is to go through a full needs analysis and get to know the individual that you're working with. So that way you can make an educated, they're relying on you to remove your biases and to say, hey, look, I don't care what you would go on, Oscar. What I care about is what makes most sense for me. Yeah. And that's the reality. And there's so many agents that just they missed the mark on that. And I would love to see people just kind of eliminate their own biases and just go through and figure out what's best for that individual.
Yeah, so I would advise, get comfortable with both. If you do more Med Sup, get comfortable having the conversations about Medicare Advantage plans, or if you're Med Advantage heavy, get comfortable with Medicare supplements, regardless of the market that you're in, because at the end of the day, your clients are relying on you to make a recommendation as to what makes the most sense for them. And so having the ability to actually present all options to them, it goes a long way, and it makes you more valuable to your clients.
Yeah, and so what I'll say real quick is that this podcast today is not a full training on Medicare supplement. And so with that in mind, I do have one. So if anybody is like, man, Raul, to be real honest, I wish you were training on Med Sups today. I do have a full training that I've done. It's about an hour long. If you shoot me a direct message, as what do the kids say, slide into my DMs there, and just send me a message, and I will gladly send you my training, and just happy to share that. So that, because again, that's not what this is. So, but we are going to go over a couple of things. I would say if I had to guess, I would say that the plan G is the option that most people go with. Did you say that? Yeah, I think that it's G, and just real quick, it's very similar to the F, right?
Yeah, very similar. The only difference is the Part B deductible. So the Plan F covers everything, right? Quote unquote, covers everything. And the only difference between an F and a G is that the G does not cover the Part B deductible. So that's, once you pay the Part B deductible, I always tell people it pretty much turns into a Plan F.
Yeah, pretty much. Everything else is covered for the rest of that year. What is the deductible for 2023?
$226. The Part B deductible for 2023. Went down some, right?
From last year?
Yeah, it was $232 something last year. I don't remember.
Yeah,
last year was so long ago.
Yeah, yeah. So I would say that's probably the option that you'll see the most. And then of course there's Plan N, which has a copay if you go for most doctor visits, and $50. It's a $20 copay for most doctor visits, and then $50 if you go to the ER, and as long as you're not admitted. Right. And so you've got those costs, and then of course there's some excess charges that really you won't see too much. Most doctors aren't charging excess charges, so you don't have to be too concerned with that. I would say it's always a risk, but it's not something that would stop me from buying a Plan N realistically. And so the premiums are going to be a little bit lower for Plan N. And so usually, I would say in kind of the standardized states. So that's important to know. Of course, there's, different ways that these plans are rated. There's community rated, issue age rated, and attained age rated. Do you have the worksheet on that, just to kind of give everyone a quick explanation? And I'll say that here in San Antonio, for the most part, plans are only they're only attained age rated, and except for there's like one company that has issue age rated plans, right? So if you want to just go ahead and give just kind of the quick explanation.
Yeah, there's three types. Community rated, which that's pretty simple. Everybody gets the same price based on where you live. So it doesn't matter your age or your gender, wherever you're at. If there's a community rated plan available, everybody's paying the same price. Pretty simple.
Yeah.
Then there's issue age, which
pretty simple, but we don't see too many of them.
Right.
it's very difficult to find one. Like in Texas, I'm not even.
I don't know that I know of any. And then you do see some issue age. So issue age, I always compare it to like a life insurance policy. So when you buy it at this age, you're locked in at this rate. It's the same with Medicare supplements. So you buy at the age that the policy is issued. That's the price you get, and that's the price that you're locked into.
The only caveat to that is that the rates do still change, and what I mean is that if the cost for 65-year-olds has gone up, and you can see so you're not locked in like life insurance, but you're locked into the age that you bought it at. So so regardless of the situation, if you bought it when you were 66, you're going to be paying what every other 66-year-old is paying, whoever got it at 66.
Yeah, so it could look different.
It could, and that's the only. And so I would like to always mention too that there are some risks there, right? Because like if the average client that bought at 65 is now 75, we're going to see some, that's going to be a pretty significant increase in what a person's paying as compared to an attained age rated.
And then there's attained age, which is, so it's the premium based on your current age. So the age that you've attained, so your premium goes up as you get older. Yeah. So if you buy it at age 65, you get the price of a 65-year-old. And then at age 66, you're going to see an increase in your premiums because you're now a year older. So it's an increase in premium because you're a year older. But then like you just mentioned, that company may increase their rates as well.
Yeah, and I would say that you could really argue you could argue for either one. You could argue for attained age over issue age, and really what it comes down to is the person's, what the individual thinks is better that you're selling it to. But the issue that I've run into realistically with kind of med subs and especially attained age is that I had a client not too long ago who called me. She was one of the first people that I enrolled. And, of course, I enrolled her when she was first turning 65, and her premiums were like $90 a month or something like that back in 2013. And then this last AEP, she called me up. She was like, man, my costs are way too high now. She was paying like $330 a month.
Believe it.
Plus her Medicare Part D premium. So she's paying some pretty significant costs. So the only issue is, and one thing I always like to make sure to let people know is, the rates do go up. And especially like once you hit around 75 years old, if you have, different issues and different things, it may be difficult to purchase a new Medicare supplement. So.
Yeah, and it might make sense now because we're seeing today more and more people are working past the age of 65, and so they're opting into Medicare, and they can get a Medicare supplement because it fits their budget now, because they're working. But later on down the road, 5 years later, things can change medically for them, or they can choose to retire, and now they're on a fixed income, could look a little bit different. So now they might be making a little less money, and if it's an age-attained policy, those premiums are going up. So if you have any clients that are on Medicare supplements, it might be good to check in on them. Every year you want to be constantly in contact with all of your clients, but for the sake of their premiums, it'd be good to monitor those. But that being said, for the most part, Medicare supplement clients are pretty low maintenance. Yeah. It's a pretty low maintenance clientele.
Yeah. What does the claim process look like?
It's very simple. You just it's billed to Medicare. So whenever you go and see your doctor, the doctor bills Medicare, and then Medicare pays their portion, and they send the remaining portion, the remaining balance, over to the Medicare supplement company. And then the company is the one who pays the remaining balance on that bill. So nothing is there's no responsibility on the client, or they're not having to pay anything or get reimbursed. All the work is done on the back end for them.
Kind of makes sense why doctors are they're like,
they love it.
Yeah, we'll take a med sup, absolutely, because of the fact that there's very little work on the end of the doctor's office. They don't need to have a separate bill. Like the billing is done. Medicare lets the most of the Medicare supplement companies know what their cost is, and then just kind of send that in. So obviously it makes it easier. So one of the questions that we receive a lot, like kind of a frequently asked question, is, can I keep my own doctor if I choose a Medigap policy? The typical answer is yes, right?
Yeah, the typical answer is yes, as long as the doctor takes Medicare. So when you're asking, I will tell clients, when you ask your doctor, don't tell them, if you sign them up for Mutual of Omaha or for Humana or for AARP MedSup, you don't want to call the doctor and ask them, do you take this company? The question is, do you take Medicare? And if they take Medicare, then your Medicare supplement can go right in there with you.
That was an issue I used to have a lot when I was working at Humana, is that people would do that a lot, where they would call into the doctor's office and be like, yeah, just signed up for a new Medicare supplement with Humana. No way, we don't take Humana.
Wasn't there another thing where the Humana Medicare supplement, the card used to say Humana Dental?
Yeah, it depends. So in different states, so they always kind of like every 7 years or so kind of reintroduce a new plan. And there was a time where the plans here in Texas were Humana Dental. And then there's another one of like, that's Humana Supplement of Illinois, but it's sold here in Texas.
Yeah.
And so like there's like just the names can be a little bit confusing. But what I would tell people is go in and tell your doctor you have a Medicare supplement, you have a secondary insurance and Medigap. Throw out all the words, and so that way they understand. Look, this is not an Advantage plan. This is not, some people call the Advantage plan a replacement plan, right? And so sometimes I would coach my client and say, hey, look, this is not what some of these doctors' offices are calling replacement plans. This is a Medicare supplement. Make that very clear when you call, because it can be confusing. Even these billers, they have hundreds and hundreds of patients, and they see all the different plans. They just know, hey, I don't take Humana. I don't. That's one thing we know. But then it turns out for a Medicare supplement, sure you do. Yeah.
A lot more freedom, right? You get the nationwide coverage with Medicare supplements. Anywhere that Medicare is accepted, your Medicare supplement can go with you.
But one thing I would that you mentioned earlier, and I just want to make sure that it didn't miss everyone, is that you said, can I keep my own doctor? Well, as long as they accept Medicare. And not every doctor accepts Medicare. And so we need to make sure that you understand that. And when you're presenting to your client, that they understand that also. Like, the worst thing that would happen is if they get there and the doctor's like, no, I don't accept Medicare at all. And then they're like, oh, well, you lied to me, Oscar. You told me that I could go to any doctor that I wanted to go to. Yeah. Like, well, as long as they accept Medicare, that's what I meant.
Yeah. So you want to make sure to be clear, but generally speaking, most doctors are taking Medicare. Every now and then there is a rare occurrence where you'll run into that. So just make sure that you're clear when you communicate that to your clients.
Yeah. Hey, real quick, just out of curiosity, and I know I probably have a different answer than you on this because it's kind of it's going to be your opinion, but how do you decide which Medicare supplement to sell? Like if I just mean that there's probably, if you do a quote, you can see like 100 different companies or something like that. How are you deciding which ones to work with?
I usually stick to the larger carriers. I think about consistency. I look at how long these companies have been in business and how they've what their increases have looked like year over year. So I'm looking for consistency. I'm looking for stability. And so personally, I'll tend to shy away from those smaller companies because a lot of times they'll get people with what we call the honeymoon rate. Right, they'll get you in at a lower rate, and then later on, as the years go on, they're gonna bump up those premiums significantly as opposed to some of the larger carriers. They're very consistent when it comes to their premiums.
Some of them, with those smaller companies, I've even seen like this happened. I don't want to call the company out, but there was a company that isn't traditionally a Medicare supplement company. They came in with this really, really low rate into Texas about 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so they came in, and within like 4 years, they stopped selling. And they didn't want people anymore, but they'd come in with these super low rates. But what they did is they really, those rates skyrocketed. And the reason they did that, they didn't want to pull out. They were just hoping people would leave the plan. Those rates really did skyrocket. So I would say that, I like to choose based off of the same thing. I want an established company that's been doing this a long time. I'm happy to say, like the Mutual of Omaha's, those type of companies have been doing it a long time. Always make a lot of sense. Aetna has their companies, the Cigna, United, Humana, and every one of them kind of has good reasons. And so when rates are within a couple of dollars each other, that's pretty much the companies that I go with. And what kind of would like to bring up is that the way that companies are competing is obviously based off of rates, but also how well they offer service, right? I think that there's companies like United Healthcare. They're really kind of doing it right when it comes to Medicare supplements. The ARP plans here in Texas, kind of doing a great job, right? So, another great way to make that decision. There's kind of some questions or ways to answer. A lot of seniors, if they've known their mom or dad had a Medicare supplement that covered prescription drugs, and so a lot of times they're looking like, wait, I thought this was supposed to cover everything. And how do you kind of explain that, especially if they've seen through the years that prescription drugs used to be covered on Medigap policies?
It's a lot different now because they're not. And so what people are doing is you've got to get a Medicare supplement, and you've got to pair it with a standalone prescription drug plan, as opposed to. And I don't even know that. I mean, how long ago was this?
A long time.
Because I don't know that I was even in the business yet
before Part D came out.
Yeah, so it was prior to 2005.
Yeah, 2006 I think is when Medicare Part D started.
Right. So as long as I've been in the business is how I've known them to be. But I've heard, hey, my parents, they had their drugs covered, and that's not the way it works anymore.
Yeah, and just kind of make that clear. Medicare supplement, usually if you go that option, you also want to get a prescription drug plan. It makes a lot of sense to do that. I'm sure at some point we'll have like a full explanation on why Part D makes sense. Couple other things, just kind of misconceptions that people have is you can switch Medigap plans anytime you want. So there's a lot of confusion that happens because you see all the advertisements during open enrollment. Now's the time to change your plan. And so you get calls from people who are on Medicare supplements. They're like, hey, I need a change, right? My premiums have gotten a little too high. I'm like, well, we can go through and we can ask you some health questions and make sure that you qualify, but you can't just change your Medicare supplement at any time in the majority of states.
Yeah, and if you decide that you do want to make a change, you'll have to go through underwriting. You can't just reshop it, find one with a lower price, and then say, okay, that's the one I want, and just be automatically enrolled into it. You would have to go through the underwriting, and they can choose to either approve or deny you.
Yeah. Hey, one thing I would just kind of as we go through, I want to talk about, because there's a lot of agents who do a lot of Medicare Advantage, and then they'll get someone during AEP who calls and they're interested in leaving their Advantage plan and going to a Medicare supplement. If you are an individual, if you have a client who is wanting to do that and they call you and it is November the 15th, or let's say November the 30th, and they're calling and they're saying, hey, I want to move over to in a Medicare supplement from my Advantage plan. Well, they're going to have to go through underwriting, right? In most states, and I got to tell you that during AEP, that's when a lot of people are moving, because that these commercials get people to move. And so, what I would tell you is, if you're an agent in that situation, especially if it's November 30th, what I would probably do is I would recommend that they wait, and I would recommend and say, hey, look, why don't we do this on January the 2nd or the 3rd, and we'll go ahead and submit your application, and once we know you're approved, then we'll move you off of the Medicare Advantage plan, because you could get in a situation, and this is my big concern for people, and this is why I always like to let agents know, you never want to get into a situation where you've removed them from their Medicare Advantage plan and then they don't qualify for the Medicare supplement, right? That would be awful. And when can you re-enroll into a Medicare Advantage plan?
It's only during, well, if you end up in a situation where you just have original Medicare with a drug plan.
As of 1/1,
you cannot use OEP.
Right.
OEP is not designed for that. It's only designed for people who have Medicare Advantage plans. So they would be stuck with just original Medicare and that PDP. So that's why we give that advice and say, let's just put that off until after the new year, see if they can get approved through the underwriting. And you've got the whole month for it to run its course through the underwriting and potentially, hopefully get approved. And if it does, then you can disenroll them from their Medicare Advantage plan and onto a PDP, onto a drug plan.
During that MA open.
During that time. But it can get really, really ugly really fast if you had tried to do that on November 30th and it didn't get approved. Yeah,
I always tell people, like, if they call, let's do it early. So like sometimes, throughout the year, people will say, hey, look, I think I want to go on to a Medicare supplement. I'd like to buy one. Okay, let's do that at the beginning of AEP. Let's do that October 15th. Let's see if we can start your application. And then once we do that, and you do that with the 1/1 effective date, but once you get toward the end of the annual enrollment period, then that's the time when we say, hey, let's pump the brakes. Let's do this in January. And really what you can do is you can do it with the 2/1 effective date. Okay, so if it doesn't get approved by 2/1, you just tell them, okay, let's just bump that date back, or because you have really until the last day to disenroll from the Medicare Advantage plan.
That's right.
So that's just an important little note that we like to let people know. Super, super important. Another one that a lot of times people get confused about is about Medicare supplements covering long-term care. They don't, right?
They do not. That is not something that original Medicare covers, and so the Medicare supplement's not going to cover. What a supplement is doing, it's supplementing Medicare. It's supplementing Part A and Part B, and so long-term care is not something that's covered by original Medicare, and it's not covered by Medicare supplements. Not for Medicare Advantage plans either, which I feel sometimes that's news to agents. When we're out there, they get that call from the client, mom's got to go into a nursing home, and does the plan cover that? Whether they're on a Medicare supplement or a Medicare Advantage plan, that's a service that is not covered.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we just need to be very mindful of that. Hey, why don't we talk real quick? Will you explain what a Medicare Select plan is?
Yes, so the way I understand it, Medicare Select it's pretty much a Medicare supplement, but with a network. So it's got a network of hospitals that you would have to use, or facilities that you'd have to use when choosing a Medicare Select plan. So why would somebody choose that? Why would I choose a Medicare Select? It's going to be more affordable. It's going to have a lower rate than your regular Plan G. So if you have a client that you're meeting with and they want you to give them a rate for a Plan G and for a Medicare Select plan, the rate's going to be lower with a Medicare Select plan.
Yeah, and a lot of times the way that it is, the way that they're doing it is based off of a hospital system. So it's like the doctors that work with this hospital system, and that's basically where you go to. So, they're especially if you're not in a market, if you're in a market like San Antonio, they probably have a pretty large network, but what you're doing is you're kind of restricting who you can go to. But that's a way to save costs if you're in one of those rural areas where there's not a lot of Medicare Advantage plans as an option, things like that. So, hey, I want to very quickly just talk about guaranteed issue rights. And there's some guaranteed issue rights where people can't be turned down in the standardized states that we kind of mentioned earlier, where you can't be turned down. And first of all, Oscar, based off of your experience, how much money are you making off of guaranteed issue sales?
I think traditionally your commission is going to be 1%.
1 or 2%. It's super, super low, and it clearly, like, a lot of these companies aren't wanting that business. But I will say there are some companies that, and you can find out who they are. There's some companies that are paying either the same, the full commission, or they are paying half of it. And so I would say that if that's so I know an agent who, if there's guaranteed issue rights, that they'll write it with this other company that's more expensive, but they pay full commission. And if it were me, I probably wouldn't do that. I'm the kind of person where I just want to, okay, I'll take this one. I'll do this for 1%, and then I'll come back and I'll get the next one. Right.
And that's doing the right thing with your heart in the right place.
Yeah.
And you're doing what's best for the individual. And you and I are both huge believers in the fact that we know that that's going to come back and reward us, whether it's directly from that client. Maybe they'll start referring business to you, or just over the long run. That's things are good karma and bad karma, right? I feel like it's out there. And I say, if you're doing things with your heart in the right place, good things are going to come to you.
So let's, before we wrap up, let's just go ahead and just talk about the guaranteed issue rights. Make sure that agents understand and have a good understanding of what would qualify for guaranteed issue. So there's a couple real quick. You have a Medicare Advantage plan and your plan is leaving Medicare or stops giving care in your area, or you move out of the plan service area, then you're eligible for guaranteed issue. And so we see that sometimes where Medicare Advantage plans decide to kind of pull out. And it opens up a lot of people when they do that. And we saw that here in Texas a couple of times recently, where a carrier pulled out multiple years in a row, and so kind of put people in situations where they were getting guaranteed issue. Kind of worked out to the benefit of some people, right? Not to the benefit of the Medicare supplement carriers, but it works out to the benefit of some people that were kind of hoping that they could, get into a Medicare supplement. Another situation is you have original Medicare and an employer group health plan, including retiree or COBRA coverage or union coverage that pays after Medicare pays, and that plan is ending. And then, of course, in this situation, you may have additional rights under state law. So kind of depends on the state, but that's another situation when you have guaranteed issue. Another one is you have a original Medicare and a Medicare Select policy, and you move out of the Medicare Select policy's service area. So that's another one that could get you guaranteed issue. The next is a trial right, and this is a big one a lot of agents don't really realize. It says you join a Medicare Advantage plan or a PACE plan when you were first eligible for Medicare Part A at 65, and within the first year of joining, you decide that you want to switch to original Medicare. So at that point, you can go on to a Medicare supplement, no questions asked. And so I always tell people, look, you have a full year. You have 11 months, like 364 days to try this out. Yep. And if it doesn't work for you, then you can go back and really purchase any Medicare supplement that you want during that time. There's a lot of agents that aren't aware of that. And what you'll do is you'll move someone onto a Medicare prescription drug plan with the SEP trial right as your SEP, and then you get them enrolled, no questions asked, into a Medicare supplement. The next one says if you dropped a Medigap policy to join a Medicare Advantage plan for the first time, you've been in the plan less than a year and you want to switch back. So we see that where, let's just say that Oscar goes and he sells someone a Medicare Advantage plan who they were interested in looking at them. They saw the commercials on TV. They were like, man, I want all that free, or all that dental and all the vision coverage. I want that gym membership. Then they go on and they're like, man, like I'm not getting my referrals on time. I'm not doing this. I actually regret joining that Medicare Advantage plan. Well, they also have a full year, anytime within that first year. And this is a great part. You don't have to wait for open enrollment. If a person wants to go back to that Medicare supplement, all they have to do is, again, it's SEP trial right to get onto that prescription drug plan, and then they can go ahead and get back onto. So this one has a different kind of caveat. It says or requirement. It says the Medigap policy you had before you joined the Medicare Advantage plan or Medicare Select policy, if the same insurance company you had before still sells it. If your former Medigap policy isn't available, then you can buy A, B, C, D, F, G, K, or L that's sold in your state by any insurance company. But you really got to go back to your old company first. The next one is your Medigap insurance company goes bankrupt and you lose your coverage, or your Medigap policy coverage otherwise ends through no fault of your own. Then you get guaranteed issue as well. And then you leave a Medicare Advantage plan or drop a Medigap policy because the company hasn't followed the rules or it misled you. First of all, with that one, it's got to be determined by Medicare. You can't just be like
not by the customer.
Yeah, you can't just be like, no, they didn't do a good job, so give me guaranteed issue. So those are, and I think that every state has kind of their own. I know here in Texas that if somebody loses Medicaid eligibility, that's the 8th one. So, so every state has kind of their own. So I would look into your own state, just make sure you do. But again, the reason that we do this podcast is we know that there's agents out there. If you're in your car, I don't want you kind of listening to the, so I got a big chuckle when I said slide into the DM. So whatever music that people are listening to, let's sharpen our tools. Let's get better at Medicare, and that's the point of the show. So do us a favor, if you've getting any value, if you would share it with someone else that is that you know that does Medicare, we'd really appreciate that. I'd say that we'd appreciate also if you'd subscribe and like our channel, and follow us on social media. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to. We share a lot of content on a regular basis, and we'd love to share more. So thank you guys so much, and we'll see you next time.